What up? Wade here. Welcome back to the Wade Alters Show. So today what we're going to talk about is a principle of success, one of the foundations, a fundamental aspect, and I think maybe the most influential and the one that has the highest leverage for you if you want more success in any area. This is the most simplest, by far the most simplest, but the quickest way, if you'll just see as you do this and as you refine the ability and the skill of doing this the right way, and I'll talk about how to do it the wrong way and also how to refine it. It's just so easy to turn it on like a light switch and say, this is the thing that I want to be more successful in. This is the area of my life that I want to grow in, and here's how I'm going to do it. And so I guess the here's how part is what comes from this process, and what it is where you put your focus, but more importantly, the phrase I'm going to coin here is what you measure grows. What you measure grows. And this seems really obvious. It seems really simple. But let me tell you how most people get it wrong. First, there's a story that's been, I've been kind of refreshing. We've been having so many new guys come through the LSA tool and stuff. We've had over 1,000 guys do it in under the first month of using it. So it's been crazy how many people have enjoyed it and saying, hey, I'm a juggler. Or, I got the safety man syndrome and things like that. So that's been really cool. And as a process of that, we have a lot of guys that had never heard about me before. So if this is the first podcast you listen to, welcome. Nice to have you on board. And one thing that I wanted to make sure to do was kind of explain my path, my story and how that all came to be. And especially some of our more foundational courses like the Man Operating System or the tools that we have around us and the things that I've kind of developed over the years. And through that, I realized that, probably the nadir of my life, the lowest point for me really was right around my 30th birthday, where it's kind of like you can handle one thing going wrong in your life. You can handle two things going wrong. But once that third thing hits, and it doesn't matter how extreme or how light it is, it just kind of pushes you over the edge where you're like, Jesus Christ, like, is there anything else that I can deal with here? And so for me, the story that I was writing an email, so some of you guys probably read this email, where I was talking about, I just come back from a long vacation/work trip where I was in Stockholm for a month, traveling through Europe. Then I went over Carnival in Rio, spent a month in Argentina, but in the process was not really getting paid what I was expecting to be getting paid. And then also not knowing when I was going to work again because I'm just like floundering around in Buenos Aires for about a month. After it was all said and done, I moved back home to Wisconsin, or came back home, and was still working on the weekends, going and doing seminars, running seminars all throughout America. But during the week, I'd come back home to my parents' place. And what happened was during this time, I turned 30 years old. And so there I am, 30, kind of still living at home. You don't think about all the trips and stuff like that at the moment. You just think to yourself, God damn it, I'm living at home right now, and totally broke because I wasn't getting paid well and I wasn't working the way that I had expected to. And what was happening when I was driving here, I was just trying to get my mind off of things and just try to kind of get some perspective and get some altitude and go, okay, why do I have just this feeling of lack, this sort of like cloudiness and confusion here as I was going through my 30 life crisis? And what happened was I'm like, damn it, what's wrong? Like, what did I do wrong? What can I learn from this? And I've been studying self-development for years. I've been teaching it for almost 4 or 5 years at this point. So I understood things like reframing the situation, looking at the good in everything. What am I grateful for? But all of a sudden, as I'm having these kind of deep thoughts, and maybe my mind was not on the road as much as it should have been, slammed right into the side of the car was this deer, this fur ball fucking flying everywhere. I think puffs of fur because I had all the windows open. And that was just kind of the thing that pushed me over the edge where I really hit that low point. And I'm just like, this too? Are you kidding me? All these things happening in one, stacking on. And like I said, the deer in the car, normally it wouldn't be a big deal at all. But on top of the finances, on top of the fact of doing something that I wasn't passionate about at all at the time, moving home at 30, as well as because I'd been gone so long, my girlfriend at the time actually ended up breaking up with me, like pseudo girlfriend, I guess. We weren't really hanging out too much because I was gone for months at a time. And so all those things combined led to me just being like, but I felt so helpless and I felt so powerless. And what you need to do, if you have that feeling of despair or the feeling like lack of control is another way this happens, where you're just like, man, I just feel like I'm completely at the whim of the environment. I'm living my life in reaction. I just don't know what I need to do. I don't know what that next step is. I know what I'm doing now is not what I enjoy. I'm not enjoying this at all. How do I gain control back? What do I grab onto? And the way that you do that is by the fundamental principle, what you measure grows. And so you have to figure out what you want to grow and do it in a way that it leads to you actually seeing progress, building momentum, and really having that top start spinning, the momentum spinning faster and faster to get you out of the negative spiral of sadness and depression and into that positive spiral of happiness, excitement, seeing the growth potential, and just really enthusiasm for your future. And so the first thing of what not to do when it comes to what you measure grows is not focusing on things that you don't want. And this is just so classic, yet it's just something that really needs to be hammered home and really be sort of clarified even further here, is that you can't say things like, I don't want to be stressed out anymore. I don't want to be stressed out. I don't want to have to worry about my finances anymore. I don't know what I want, but I don't want this job or this boss or this company. Those just reinforce that. It's crazy how when you get into the level of persuasion, the truth about persuasion really comes down to a lot of times just forcing the same sort of awareness on the same things again and again and again and again and again. And so if you're constantly reinforcing to yourself that you're stressed about life, stressed about money, stressed about your job, it's just reinforcing that, stressed about some sort of colleague. It's just you're manifesting that into the world because that's where you're putting your focus, and you're seeing that little kinks of that, little parts of it. Like I said, even for myself, what I was just talking about in the story before, there were a lot of aspects of my life that were great, that were amazing, that most people would literally die for, to go spend a month in Buenos Aires and not even have to work and things like that. Like, what the hell? What was I even complaining about at the time? But I was focusing on the parts of it that I didn't like, the things that I didn't want. And so what was happening is it just continued to reinforce those things. And I'd make bad decisions about my spending habits to reinforce even further that, yes, I don't want to be stressed about my finances anymore, but damn it, why is it happening again and again? It's just classic goal achievement sort of stuff here. If you want to get better with success with women, don't focus on, oh, I don't want to get rejected anymore, or I don't want a girlfriend who breaks up with me, or things like that. Focus on what you do want. So that's something that's really important. The second thing, it's kind of, we're getting into just like overall basic goal achievement here, because that's what really success comes down to, is achieving your goals. And with the measure grow principle here, you're trying to measure the growth towards that goal. And so another thing that's super, super important, and I work with guys in the syndicate all the time, a lot of times what we'll do is we'll have a Monday sort of like, hey, what do you want me to hold you accountable to for this week? And then on Friday I check in, but I also make sure that they have clear, smart sort of goals. And guys will be like, oh, I want to make sure that I eat healthy and I read a lot. That's not specific enough. How many times a week? What does it mean to you to eat healthy? What do you got to do so that when Friday rolls around, you know exactly if you've eaten healthy or not? And what happens with that too is your decisions become so much more clear. The law of attraction kicks in and you go, okay, oh, interesting. I need to eat 3 salads this week. Oh, all of a sudden you're at the grocery store, or you're at let's say you're eating at a restaurant and you're like, oh, salad. Whoa. Okay, cool. I need to eat 3 of those this week. And so that's really where the law of attraction kicks in, is when you have that specificity. The opportunities were there all along. You just weren't paying attention to them, or you didn't see them because you had that cloudiness again that leads to just feeling kind of out of control. So specificity is a huge part of it. And then also it gets into specificity to take this to another level of getting granular enough with the goal. And so this was something I kind of talked about last week, but what inspired this talk here even was the fact that I was talking with a client about a week ago or so. And so to give you a little backstory, he'd been working with me for a few years. And through that process, we got him to quit his job, start his own business full time. And it was starting to grow, but it's still in the baby stages, I would say. And he had set a goal for himself of wanting to, gross $10,000 a month. So that was his sort of goal. It was like, I want to hit 10K a month, 10K a month, 10K a month. And after like a few months, or what we talked about earlier in that session, the last session that we had, is he's like, man, that $10,000 a month, it's not really jazzing me up. It's not exciting. It's something, I did that before in my corporate job. So it's not the fact that I've never reached that before, even though, let me tell you from personal experience, 10K in your own business is very different than 10K when you're working for someone else. It's just a completely, completely different thing when it comes to freedom and accomplishment that comes along with that. But getting back to the point here, what it was for him is that because the 10K, it didn't allow him to have that lever again. If you could see my hands, I'm just grabbing a lever and moving it around. You need a leverage point. You need to have something that you can grab onto, fully grasp it and say, okay, if I crank this thing up, that will lead to the success that I want. It'll lead to the lifestyle and manifest the freedom, the excitement, the passion that I want. And so moving towards 10K a month wasn't for him. If, hey, maybe he was already at, like a 6 or 7, 8, 9, whatever. And he's just like, okay, if I add one more client, that'll leave me 9,500. He can see the adding the client on is what gets him there. But because the business is kind of so fresh, he doesn't really have those metrics in place yet. And this is what happens all the time in the start of a business. You just kind of got to make stuff up and saying, I think I'll grow by 20% every month or 20% every year and just see kind of what happens. But once you get some metrics there, then you can really start getting into the details and doing this and getting what it leads to. You have so much more confidence and faith in your success when you have a very specific visual lever to move forward with. And so what we did for him, he had set the goal for himself that he wanted to reach out to 100 new prospects. And at first he was like, okay, if I don't get any coaching clients out of this, then I might have to think about going back and doing my day job or something like that. And I said, so you're telling me that if you sent out 100 emails and let's say, all of the stuff happens, you get some phone calls, you get some sales calls, some back and forth, and 5 of them at the very last second, you kind of lose it. But you had like 20 sales calls. If all that happened and you don't get a coaching client, that means you're still, or a client overall, that still means you're just going to completely give up. He's like, no, I'd be so close that of course, if all that stuff happened, I wouldn't give up because I realized how close I was. And so what I told him, I was like, this is what you got to focus in on. Focus in on the small little micro details. So if you want to put 100 emails out, what do you want for your return rate? How many people do you want to email you back and just say, sure, yeah, I'd love to get on the phone with you. And so let's say it's 10, just put a number out there. What is a 10 out of 10 for you? I get 10 out of the 100. So that means if you get 8, all of a sudden you're like, shit, how do I go from 8 to 10? That question there leads to a much better solution. It leads to so much of something you can grab onto. Going from about every 100 people I reach out to, I want to go from 8 to 10. Then all of a sudden it's like, it becomes really easy. One, you're thinking, okay, well, first, how do I track that? Okay, let me get Excel. Can I track the opens? Can I see if they're even opening the email? Maybe I should go research some software out there. And there definitely is software where you can see if they even open the email, or do they click on the link and go to the website? You can put some tracking on the website. Then you might say, shit, well, they're not even, opening the email. I got to work on my subject line material. Therefore, I should read a book on, read Jay Abraham's top 2001 headlines and get better subject lines. And then think about maybe I should read some email copy, some, programs on becoming a better copywriter. And then all that process goes, now you get it to 8 to 10. What's the next thing to focus on? So of those 10 prospects that you get a response back, how many of them actually set up a sales call? How many of them flake? What do I got to do then? And then you start building that system and you say, shit, I need to have email follow-ups and email reminders so that they actually get on the call. All of a sudden you get them on the call and then it goes to shit. And you're like, shit, I got to work on the sales process. But what happens is when you see the growth potential and when you see those super granular skills, it makes this level of success, like your confidence around being successful, the faith that you have, it just shoots through the roof because you're like, oh my God, I know exactly what I need to do. And I see how it's going to lead to me getting closer towards that end goal. And so what it is really, like I said, if I package this all up again, it's focusing on what you want, not what you don't want. And then it's about that specificity of what specifically I want to measure. And so bringing this full circle, that's why it's even more important to go, what do I want to measure? What do I want to grow? And so probably, the quintessential example, I'll try to think of some non-business examples here, but one that I've definitely heard guys say is they wanted to get 100,000 YouTube subscribers. And they're a coach and thinking, I need to get 100,000 YouTube subscribers. And I'm like, wow, that's great. That means you get a lot of awareness around your brand. But I know a lot of guys with 100,000 YouTube subscribers and gals that are still broke and they're not having the freedom that they want in their life. And they're grinding it out, hustling harder. They're creating a more challenging job. Like, yeah, they're creating videos about some cool thing like personal training or something like that. So they're kind of doing what they love. But because it's so hustle mode and grind mode, is like it hasn't become fun anymore. And there they are putting videos out every single day, trying to eke out another 1% of advertising revenue or something like that, instead of focusing on revenue. Or even better than that, instead of focusing on revenue, is focusing on profit and the profit that you can take out of the business. And so the closer you get in knowing what you're specifically measuring, automatically, like I said, the law of attraction, opportunities come up. What it is the better question you ask, the better answer you're going to get. And so if you're just like, why am I not successful? Why am I not successful? All you're going to get is more feedback of saying, here's why you're not successful too. This is also why you're not successful. This is why it's also not happening. Instead of saying, what are these little things that I want to focus on? Where are those little opportunities for growth and how can I grow? So let's hit this from a couple other angles. First, we'll go with the gym. Don't be the guy that's just putting 2 plates on each side there, going to the bench press. And then every day you're trying to do that and you're like, why isn't it working? Why isn't it working? I'm still not there. What's going wrong here? Also, don't be the guy that's hitting the squat rack and says, I hope I don't get hurt. I better be careful so I don't get hurt here. Those are going to lead to not the best things. Think about what are those small little areas that you can focus on so you can grow and track it. You know, what the hell? Track that shit. Like, am I the only one at the gym that brings a little spreadsheet? I feel like I am. I see a couple guys with journals here. What you measure grows. Same thing with success with women. Is like, if you go out every time, the 2 plates on each side on the bench press is the same thing about going out every night and being like, why didn't I get laid? Why didn't I get laid? Why didn't I get laid? Get in, look at the micro detail. Don't also think, I hope this goes well. Like, I don't want to get any rejections tonight. I don't want any bad approaches. It's like, focus in on what specifically you can work on. And from my experience, personally, as well as working with hundreds, one-on-one, if not thousands, giving advice to, and who've watched my products related to the dating arena, is that a lot of times what it always comes back to is that first interaction you have. So if you're dealing with issues where they're not giving you the number at the end of the interaction, or you get the number and they're not kind of meeting up with you or anything like that, it comes down to how did you handle that first interaction? Were you a leader? Were you masculine? Were you dominant? And even more than that, the first approach, how you approach her, and then how everything just extrapolates off of that. It manifests off of that. It rolls downhill past that. And so then if you feel that you're hitting your head against the wall and just saying, why are none of these girls meeting up with me? Go back to and look at the approach. Start with the fundamentals, the mechanics, having good eye contact, good tonality, and, you know, just focusing on that area. And what it does is all of a sudden you gain back control. You can measure that and see how those results manifest. And then in the end, through that process, you see the growth in your sex life, in your finances, in your overall success, in the gym. That's what makes it happen. It's from measuring things, that specificity. So you make sure you're measuring the right things. And that's what leads to success. So hope you enjoyed it. Have a great week here. Good start to 2017. Make sure you set your goals, hit it hard. And as always, enjoy.